Good morning. Today we have invited Mr. Lal Gamage, philanthropist, entrepreneur, and CEO of ProSale Property Group. Welcome to the morning show.
Good morning, Salih.
We are here to discuss about the property market and all things of property. It's going to be a long one. Where are we going to start today?
Well, it's a very interesting time, Salih, to talk about everything property, and with record 10 consecutive interest rate rises, and property market as a whole is at a very questionable time period in Australia. We're going to talk about good times, bad times, and how to navigate through all these challenging times in property, and how to become a successful property investor or a real estate professional during this series.
I mean, you're quite qualified to say that because, I mean, looking at the record interest rates and stuff like that, because you got a financial accounting professional background, you got a tax background, and you got a total 15 years in the property market in Australia?
Yes, thank you, Salih, for the generous introduction. I like to mention in the outset what we are discussing here is a general advice only. If you are looking for a very specific advice, you should go to your financial planner or financial advisor. Yes, my background in financial, tax and accounting allow me to elaborate on these subjects, but please take this as a general advice. I got, in addition to my finance and accounting background, I'm a licensed state agent. I got a diploma in construction and building, and about 15 years experience in this game.
And how would one go about in the property market today, say if you want to be an owner?
Look, in a very short form, I would say this is the best time to buy a property. This can be very controversial, of course. The market for last 6 to 9 months has been a buyer's market. Reason for that is the interest rate is very much challenging. Banks are very conservative in lending, assessing lending criteria. And people are now starting to sell their investment stocks and properties because there are so many difficulties in holding them up. The record high land taxes and interest rate is gone really double, triple after the COVID time.
Yep.
As a very decent investor, I would say it is a good time to buy.
So there are different types of ownerships when you go to the investment property if you have a property,
yes.
Or you can even buy a property and put it in the rental market and stuff like that. What is your advice?
Look, again, it can be depending on your individual circumstances. The most common approach is to buy an investment property under your personal names, your mom and dad investors, we call it, your husband and wife's name, and that is the most common approach in terms of working people, professionals buying investment properties to minimize their PAYG tax they pay on their salaries. And we'll discuss this in detail in our future episodes, specifically on negative gearing, how you can reduce your taxes by owning an investment property. So that's one approach. The other approach, of course, is people with 2, 3, 4 investment properties. They might decide to own them under a company name. They register a limited liability company. You buy the property under that. Then, of course, you have to look at your GST, capital gain tax, in a different perspective. And that is another approach. And there's another ownership structure is a self-managed super fund. So there are a couple of ways you can buy investment properties under your self-managed super fund. The most common is the limited resource borrowing, because as a super fund you can't borrow money as a standard super fund. You can have a self-managed super fund, but you still can't borrow money.
What's the difference between a self-managed super fund and a...
Yes, the self-managed super funds, if you like to borrow money and own an investment property with bank borrowing, you have to set it as a limited resource borrowing structure with the Bear Trust and a different trust structure. I'm not going into detail, but you should talk to your accountant. And if you got enough money in your super funds to buy the property outright, then you don't need to set up as a limited resource borrowing entity. There are two ways to set up. Either way, you can own an investment property under your super fund, self-managed super fund.
And just if you take the dad and mom ownership property, so you think it's a good time for a dad and mom who are set in life, having a steady job to invest in property now?
Yes, look, in my view, any time you can afford to buy an investment property, it is a good time to buy and hold an investment property. Look, the property is the most proven way to create wealth. No question about it. Yes, you can own shares, you can argue about crypto market, you can go about some other collectible investments. The property has been, especially the Australian property, has been a very rewarding investment over the years, and it's going to continue.
See, it's about how much, 6% in annual growth, about 6%?
Look, the traditional thought is properties in Australia double in value in every 10 years. Look, it may not be 100% accurate. In my experience, I have seen it done in 8 to 12 years. So if you buy the right place, right suburb, right property, it might double in 8 years. But on average, between 8 to 12 years, it's double in value. So that gives you the rate of return. And if you talk about the percentage, it's anywhere between 7 to 12%. So if you take a conservatively 8%, 8.5% growth, annual growth in your investment property, combined with your negative gearing, tax benefits, the growth, you shouldn't go wrong in an investment property.
Now the rental market has just gone crazy recently.
Yes, that's the other thing now. These days, everybody is complaining about, I can't borrow enough money, I can't buy a property, I can't sustain a property. But the recent time, 6 to 9 months, we've seen enormous demand for rental properties, and property rental values gone up anywhere between 20 to 25% increase in rent. The reason being, of course, after COVID, construction activity slowed down. People now starting to come back to Australia. The migration program, I just heard that the 2023 financial year, 400,000 people came to Australia. The next financial year, 2024, they're predicting another 315,000 people to come into Australia. So as opposed to the construction activity, the recent survey has revealed only 130,000 houses were built in Australia. So you see the difference, like the supply, demand, people need a place to stay. And also the government recent bill, they're talking about $10 billion housing affordability future fund. That bill is in front of the parliament. So all this is suggesting us the housing activity is going to be
increasing.
People need a place to stay. Government going to provide support by way of grants or loans and subsidies to allow young people to own their homes.
Is there a first home loan grant still around?
Yeah, there are a couple of first home grants still available. The most common one is if you buy a brand new property, you get $10,000 grant, over $20,000 if it's a regional area. And there's also a government loan scheme. Not many people know about this thing. It's about 25% of your house value is provided by way of interest-free loan from the government.
That's a first home buyer.
First home buyers, subject to certain criteria, of course. The government provides you 25% no interest loan, and bank gives you the 75%. There's no mortgage insurance and all that. But there are many schemes you should be familiarized with, especially for the first home buyers. There are a lot of support available still. Yes, interest rate is slightly high, but again, if you look at the long-term average, last 30-year average mortgage interest rate is anywhere between 6.8 to 7.3%. So we're complaining about what's 5.96% today because we got so much used to the post-COVID 2% interest. It was never going to last that level.
And will it come back? You've got no idea.
Exactly. Look, this is why the property is a long-term game. It's just a long-term. We call them, all our property investors, we call them slow millionaires.
Yep.
So you don't have a shorter or quicker way to become a property millionaire. You got to be in it long enough to realize the gains and enjoy the benefits. And on average, if you're not prepared to hold a property between 3 to 5 years, that's minimum 3 to 5 years, don't get into this business.
Okay.
So 5 to 10 years, you'll make a decent money.
Right. Lal, there's so much intricacy involved in this home loan and, you know, getting things done in the financial aspect. ProSale gives you all that advice.
Yes, we provide certain advice and within our capabilities and expertise, but I like to state two very important things in property investments earlier. Is the time and the knowledge. Like I mentioned before, the property investing, you got to be prepared to spend the time and ownership in a certain period of time. And like you said, there was so many information, so many misinformation, so many regulation you need to be aware of if you become a property investor. So the time and the knowledge is the key to be a successful property investor.
There you heard it from Mr. Lal Gamage, CEO of ProSale Property Group. There's so many more episodes to come. Thank you, Lal.
Thank you, Salih.